الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا فمن يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذين تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا إن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار أما بعد. Today, inshallah, I will give a story to remind us all about the vast mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how making an effort to turn to Him, no matter how small, could be the very thing that leads us to Jannah. This story will be about Sayyidina Omar Ibn Alkhatab radiallahu anhu and his conversion to Islam. I'm sure most of us already know about him or have heard his story. We all know he was the second Khalifa and was one of the 10 Mubashirin for Jannah. But do we really know and reflect upon how he changed? Before we start, I apologize in advance because this short 15-minute khutbah won't be able to do his story justice. But I want you all to pay attention to who he was and where he ended up, and to use this, inshallah, to follow in his footsteps. So, in the times of Jahiliyyah, the pre-Islamic ignorance of Arabia, Umar used to worship idols just like everyone else around him. At that time, people believed in superstitions and let senseless laws dictate the way they live. They used to pray to the wood and stone that they built with their own hands instead of to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They made up their own rules to follow as a way of life. Unjust rules like the killing of infant girls, the unjust treatment of the poor, women and slaves. And why did everybody just submit to these nonsensical practices? They did so for the sole reason they found their forefathers practicing this. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمُ اتَّبِعُوا مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ قَالُوا بَلْ نَتَّبِعُ مَا أَلْفَيْنَا عَلَيْهِ آبَاءَنَا. When it is said to them, follow what Allah has revealed, they say, rather, we would follow what we found our forefathers upon. So Allah responds to their rhetoric with, وَلَوْ كَانَ آبَاؤُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ شَيْئًا وَلَا يَهْتَدُونَ. Would they still do so, even if their forefathers had absolutely no understanding or guidance? Just like his people, Umar followed his culture and took part in sin after sin. And moreover, Umar was very fond of drinking alcohol. But when we study the books of history, we never see this part. We always see that Umar radiallahu anhu became one of the closest companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and one of the greatest leaders to ever exist in all of humanity. But how is this? When Umar was young, his father was a very harsh and abusive person. He forced Umar to tend to his camels until exhaustion. This tough upbringing made Umar a strong person and also broke that feeling of loyalty to his dad, which the rest of Quraysh had. As he got older, he learned how to read and became a very wise person. So wise, actually, that Quraysh made him one of their leaders, one of them, the youngest person among them. This is important to note because the people who were influenced in his thoughts and actions now were the Meccan elites and their sons. Eventually, when Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam started to preach Islam, the Meccan leaders hated it, and Umar did too because he was among them. Umar, though, was a little bit different. His hate for Islam was not because of the same reason as them, but his hate for Islam was because it disrupted the social fabric of Mecca, and Umar was loyal to his people, not his forefathers. All day, Umar heard argument after argument about how Muhammad is attacking their tradition, their forefathers, their beliefs, and how he must be stopped. Because of this, Umar hated the Prophet ﷺ without even knowing what he was preaching. SubhanAllah, it's amazing what ignorance can do to a person. Umar soon joined Quraysh in attacking the Muslims and persecuting people until they revert. Because of people like Umar and the rest of the leaders, Mecca became an unbearable place to live. People could be killed just for saying they believe in none other than Allah. Families were being torn apart, and relationships and friendships were being severed. And Umar didn't like any of what he was doing, but saw it as a necessity. If you remember, Umar used to be a shepherd, and because of this, he learned that you must care for the flock both as a community and as individuals. And the worst thing for the flock is for part of it to go astray, because this opens them up to become an easy prey for attack. To him, people accepting Islam was like the flock going astray. It's helpful to note here that the mushrikeen never used to say, oh, this person Aslam, or became Muslim. They'd always say, this person Saba'a, they deserted. And this reflects Umar's point of view towards Islam before he accepted. Seeing all of these problems spiraling out in Mecca, he became angry. Why am I attacking the people, the flock, instead of dealing with the problem head on? He viewed Sayyidina Muhammad as the root cause of the problem, and he decided to kill the Prophet. Imagine, striding through the streets of Mecca, sword in hand, some of the Muslims scared. What is this enemy of Islam going to do? One of the brave Sahabi, who accepted Islam in secret, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, tried to do something. He tried to disrupt his plan. He asked Umar, where are you going? And Umar replied bluntly, I'm going to kill Muhammad. Now that it was confirmed, Sa'd's heart dropped in his chest. He was desperate to find any way to stop him, and so he told him, أَفَلَا أَدُلُّكَ عَلَى الْعَجَبِ يَا عُمَرَ. Well, I'm going to tell you something amazing, Umar. قَدْ دَخَلَ عَلَيْكَ هَذَا الْأَمْرُ فِي بَيْتِكَ. This problem has entered your own home, meaning his sister and her husband, his brother-in-law, Fatima bint Al-Khattab and Sa'id bin Zayd, had become Muslim in secret. As we know, Umar was a very arrogant person before Islam. How could he go kill the Prophet when his own family had accepted his message? That would make him a hypocrite. Immediately, he turned around, angrier than he was before, to revert his family before he goes to kill the Prophet. When he gets there, he hears them recite the Quran through the door, and he barges in and starts attacking Sa'id. And his sister Fatima tries to cool him down, but as she approaches him, he slaps her. And it was such a hard slap that it made her start to bleed. Because of this, she says to him, يَا ابْنَ الْخَطَّابِ مَا كُنْتَ صَانِعًا فَاصْنَعْ فَقَدْ أَسْلَمْنَا وَآمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ فَمَا كُنْتَ صَانِعًا فَاصْنَعْ. O Ibn al-Khattab, whatever you're going to do it. We have accepted Islam and Sayyidina Muhammad, so whatever you're going to do with us, just do it. What she's trying to say is that because of what Umar is doing, meaning the persecution of Muslims in Mecca, and now the persecution of them, they have become Muslim in spite of him, and they're ready to die for the religion. This is exactly what Umar feared when persecuting Muslims. The fact that the harder you persecute them, it seems their faith just grows stronger and stronger. And so he sat down and thought about what he just did, and felt terrible for making his sister bleed. And sitting there, he sees the parchment that contained the verses they were reading from, and they're reading from, that they tried to hide before he entered, and he wanted to read them. His sister made him make wudu, so now he's in a state of physical purity, and he also has an open mind and an open heart to the verses. It's the open verse of Surah Taha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Taha, ما أنزلنا عليك القرآن لتشقى إلا تذكرة لمن يخشى تنزيلا ممن خلق الأرض والسماوات العلى الرحمن على العرش استوى له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وما بينهما وما تحت الثرى وإن تجهر بالقول فإنه يعلم السر وأخفى الله لا إله إلا هو له الأسماء الحسنى. صدق الله العظيم. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Taha, we have not revealed this Quran to you, O Muhammad, to cause you distress, but as a reminder for the God-fearing. A revelation from the one who created the the earth and the high heavens, the most compassionate, established upon the throne. To him belongs everything in the heavens and everything on earth, everything between them and whatever is beneath the soil. Whether you speak openly or not, he knows what is secret and even more hidden. Allah, there is no God but He. To Him belongs the perfect names. Subhanallah. These verses were like an arrow that hit directly into Umar's heart. It was his first true encounter with this beautiful message, with these beautiful verses, where before he was in the darkness of Jahiliyyah, and now it was like his eyes were opened. The whole time he's reading it, all he can think is, مَا أَطْيَبَ هَذَا الْكَلَامِ. How beautiful, how amazing are these words. And by the time he finishes reading it, he starts to cry. He asks his sister, أَمِنْ هَذَا فَرْحَةُ قُرَيْشٍ. Is this what Quraysh was fleeing from this whole time? The only problem Umar had with Islam was the division it created in Mecca. And now he fully understood why everyone was accepting it. And it was because it was the truth from Allah. There's no doubt about it, and there's no words comparable to it. After reading those few verses with an open heart and an open mind, Umar decided to accept Islam. Just a second ago, there's nobody Umar hated more than the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was ready to kill him, then turn himself in to be killed for it. But now, the only thing he has in his heart for Islam and for the Prophet is love. He went to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and accepted Islam and dedicated his whole life to the religion of Allah. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Like I explained earlier, these stories of the Prophets and the Sahaba are not just for us to listen to and then forget. They're for us to take a lesson from them. We should deeply reflect on them and find the value in them and implement it into our own lives. Sometimes we look at people like Umar radiallahu anhu and we say, we'll never be like these people. Why even try? But we forget that before Islam, these people were normal people too. Look at Umar, he wanted to kill the Prophet. He's even worse than us. Before Islam, of course. Their entire lives were recorded in the books of history for us to benefit from. And this is why Allah chose them like He chose the Prophets, because they were the perfect leaders for this ummah. So let's extract some of the lessons that came from this story. First, the profound impact that the Quran had on Umar when he read it with an open heart and an open mind. It turned him from the biggest enemy of Islam at that time to one of the best companions. Why then do we expect that it can't have the same impact on us? If anything, really, it should have a bigger impact on us because none of us are planning to kill a prophet. Second, we know that after Umar accepted Islam, he didn't just stop there, but he did everything in his power to change and to become a better Muslim. And he strove in the cause of Allah, and this is how he got to where he was, after so many years of hard work and dedication. As I say, Rome wasn't built in a day. And lastly, we see a lesson for everyone here, every one of us, about redemption. Looking back on his life, Umar said, كنا نصنع آلهة من التمر نعبدها نهارا ونأكلها ليلا. We used to create gods to worship from dates, tamr. We worshipped them throughout the day, and in the night we ate them when we got hungry. This just goes to show how far the Sahaba and Umar, they changed after Islam. No matter who you are or what you did, Allah is the most merciful. He is Ar-Rahman, and He is the most forgiving, Al-Ghafur. He guided and accepted the repentance of a person who was about to kill his messenger. So why do we think He won't do the same for us? Let us take a lesson from this. Let us go home tonight and pick up a book or watch a video about these amazing people. Let us deeply reflect and think about what they did and how it applies to us. I know I gave you guys only 3 lessons from the story, but wallahi, I am telling you that you will find much more if you just look. This dunya is short, ya akhwati billah. So we have to start making the changes today. Before we close, I'd just like to share one more quote from Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu to think about on your drive home. He said, لا تحسن على ما فات إلا لتجتهد فيما آت. Don't despair or get sad over the past, except to push yourself forward in the future. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الشرك والمشركين وأحمي حوزة الإسلام يا رب العالمين. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات المؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم ارفع لهم الدرجات. اللهم اغفر لآبائنا وأمهاتنا وأبنائنا وبناتنا وأخواننا وأخواتنا ولسائر المسلمين يا رب العالمين. وصلى الله وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه.